Have you ever had someone talk down to you, not just once, but in a way that lingers in your chest long after the words have faded? Maybe it was a rude comment from a relative at the dinner table, a neighbor who seemed to go out of their way to embarrass you, or someone younger who looked at you like you were invisible. And as much as you tried to let it slide, your heart started racing, your hands clenched, and before you knew it, you were replaying the whole thing over and over in your head, thinking of what you could have said or should have said. Sound familiar? Now let me ask you something a little tougher. When that moment happened, did you feel powerful, or did you feel like someone just stole your peace? You see, disrespect isn't always loud. It's not always someone shouting in your face. Sometimes it's quiet. A condescending tone, a smirk, a joke that cuts too close to the bone. And when it happens, especially as we get older, it can feel deeply personal. Like they don't see your worth, your years, your wisdom. Like you've somehow become easy to overlook. But here's the truth. How you react in that moment says more about you than it does about them. That's why today, I want to talk to you about something that changed my life. And I believe it can change yours too. It's a simple idea passed down from ancient wisdom. That true strength isn't found in your voice or your ability to fight back, but in your ability to stay calm, stay in control, and let fools reveal themselves without you lifting a finger. Now I know what you might be thinking. But if I don't say something, won't they think I'm weak? I used to think the same. But let me tell you, some of the strongest people I've ever met didn't have to raise their voices. They didn't have to prove anything. They just smiled, stayed still, and let the world figure out how powerful they really were. There was a time not too long ago when someone tried to humiliate me in front of a group. They made a snide comment about my age, implying I was out of touch, irrelevant. Everyone in the room turned to look at me, waiting for me to fire back. And oh, trust me, I wanted to. Every muscle in my body was ready to defend myself. But instead, I paused. I took a slow breath. I looked them in the eye and said nothing. Just silence. And you know what happened? They kept talking, nervous now, scrambling to fill the space. And the more they spoke, the more obvious it became to everyone who the fool in the room really was. That's the first real lesson I want to share with you. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Disrespect is bait. It's a trap, designed to pull you into a reaction. And when you take it, you don't win. You just reveal your buttons, your triggers. You show people exactly how to hurt you next time. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to play the game, you rob them of their power. You become unpredictable, unshakable, untouchable. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stay in places where you're disrespected. Not at all. In fact, one of the most powerful things you can do is simply leave. Calmly, quietly, with dignity. I'll never forget a dinner party I attended a few years back. A friend, well, someone I used to call a friend, told an old embarrassing story about me in front of people I barely knew. He laughed like it was no big deal. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply put down my fork, stood up, and walked out. No drama. No raised voice. Just peace. And that night, I made a quiet decision. My peace matters more than your entertainment. And that brings me to something else I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Walking away is not weakness. It's wisdom. See, we're raised to believe that real strength means never backing down. That you've got to stand your ground, fight back, prove your worth. But real strength isn't about how long you can argue. It's about how much peace you're willing to protect. And protecting your peace sometimes means walking away from a fight you could win, because you know it's not worth your energy. You have to think of your attention like currency. When you give it to people who thrive on conflict, you're investing in their chaos. And let me tell you, that investment never pays off. You walk away more drained, more bitter, more tangled in nonsense that had nothing to do with your purpose in the first place. Now, I'm not saying you should become a doormat. Far from it. I'm saying you should become a wall. Solid, still, unbothered. A wall doesn't need to shout to show its strength. It just stands. That's the kind of power we can learn to carry. To be like the ocean in a storm, deep, still, unwavering beneath the surface. Let the wind howl. Let the waves crash. You know who you are. And speaking of knowing who you are, this is where a lot of us trip up. Because when someone disrespects us, it shakes something inside. It makes us doubt. Did I lose my edge? Am I not respected anymore? And that doubt can push us into reacting, just to feel seen, just to feel heard. But here's the truth. When you know your worth, you don't have to shout it. You just live it. There was a man I once worked with who had a saying I'll never forget. He said, "If it's true, why get angry? And if it's false, why bother?" That stuck with me. Because that's what staying calm really means. Not that you're ignoring the insult, but that you've measured it and found it unworthy of your time. Staying calm doesn't mean you're passive. It means you've mastered yourself. And in a world that constantly tries to poke at your emotions, that kind of mastery, it's rare. It's golden. It's freedom. Now let's take a breath here. You might be nodding along right now thinking, that sounds good, but easier said than done. And I agree. I'm not pretending this is easy. Staying calm when someone disrespects you takes practice. It takes intention, but it's possible. And more than that, it's powerful. It's the kind of strength that doesn't just change the moment. It changes your life. Let's be honest, it's easy to say, stay calm. But when someone throws that jab, especially when it's subtle or comes from someone close, it cuts deep. And that cut doesn't just sting the surface. It hits your pride, your history, all the things you've lived through, worked for, and earned the right to be respected for. So what do you do when that emotion rises like a wave inside you, when your brain is screaming to defend yourself? You pause. Not forever. Just long enough to reclaim your power. Because that pause, that moment between the offense and your reaction, is where your strength lives. Let me tell you about something that changed the way I handle disrespect. A few years ago, I started using a mental habit I now call the second breath. The first breath, that's the one you take automatically when you're upset. It's usually shallow, tight, maybe even shaky. But the second breath, that's the one you choose. You draw it in slowly, deliberately, and in that breath you tell yourself, I am not my emotion. I am the observer of it. That's the beauty of age, isn't it? We've lived enough life to know that not every emotion deserves a reaction. In fact, most don't. But you have to remind yourself in the heat of the moment, because your ego wants to jump in and take the wheel. And your ego, well, let's just say it doesn't always have your best interest at heart. The ego wants drama. It wants to win. It wants applause. But your soul? Your soul wants peace. And this is where practice becomes more than just an idea. It becomes a discipline, a way of choosing how you want to live, not just how you want to look in a moment of conflict. And that choice starts inside your own mind, through what I call inner dialogue. Inner dialogue is the conversation you're having with yourself when someone's pushing your buttons. If you've never trained that voice, it tends to sound a lot like a panicked teenager. Say something. Don't let them get away with it. You've got to teach them a lesson. But when you've practiced, that voice matures. It starts asking better questions. Is this worth my energy? Will this matter tomorrow? Who do I want to be right now? It's a shift from reacting to reflecting. And it's subtle, but powerful. I once had a coworker who would deliberately cut me off every time I spoke in meetings. At first, it drove me crazy. I felt invisible, disrespected. My first instinct was to match his energy, to interrupt him right back, to out-talk him, to make sure he knew I wasn't someone to mess with. But then I tried something different. I waited. I let him finish fully. I looked him in the eye. And when it was my turn to speak, I did so clearly, calmly, with all the weight of someone who didn't need to compete. The result? People started listening, not just to me, but to the difference. They saw the contrast. His insecurity, my presence. And slowly, the dynamic changed. You see, calm isn't passive. It's persuasive. And that leads us into something a lot of people misunderstand: the difference between silence and surrender. Silence doesn't mean you're letting them win. It means you've already won, because you've decided that their behavior isn't worth your peace. When someone disrespects you and you don't respond, you're not being weak. You're letting them reveal their own character without your help. There's a saying I love: never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty and the pig likes it. That's what reacting emotionally to disrespect often becomes: a mud fight you didn't sign up for. You end up covered in someone else's chaos, wondering how you got there. But when you remain calm, you stay clean. You stay above it. Now, I want to touch on something that might be harder to hear, but it's important. Sometimes the person who disrespects you is someone you love: a child, a spouse, a sibling. And when that happens, it hurts in a different way. Because you expect strangers to misunderstand you, but not them. So how do you stay calm then? You remember who you are. Because disrespect, especially from people close to you, often comes from their own pain, not your failure. And if you react in anger, you just multiply the pain. But if you stay calm, if you choose dignity over dominance, you create a space where truth, not ego, can show up. It doesn't mean you ignore the issue. It means you wait until your emotions are steady, then speak from clarity, not from chaos. I had a viewer write to me once, an older gentleman, who said his adult son would often belittle him in front of his grandkids. He'd make sarcastic comments, undermine his stories, even roll his eyes when he spoke. For years, this man tried to laugh it off, thinking he was being the bigger person. But inside, it broke him. So one day, instead of exploding, he asked his son, privately, calmly, "What are you trying to prove when you speak to me that way?" And then he said nothing else. That silence made his son stop. For the first time, he reflected. And that conversation, started not in anger, but in quiet strength, changed their relationship. Sometimes calm isn't just for your peace. It's the only path to healing a broken connection. But let's not forget this: staying calm doesn't always mean staying close. If someone continuously disrespects you, especially after you've set boundaries, sometimes the calmest, strongest thing you can do is walk away, for good. It's not about cutting people off out of spite. It's about recognizing your worth, knowing that you've earned the right to be spoken to with dignity, and if someone refuses to do that, you don't owe them your presence. That's not revenge. That's wisdom. And it's one of the most liberating things you can learn after 60. You've already walked through storms. You've already endured more than most people know. You don't need to prove your strength anymore. Now is the time to protect your peace, to cultivate quiet, to walk into rooms not with a sword, but with stillness, and let that stillness speak for you. There's something freeing about reaching a point in life where you realize not every comment deserves a comeback. Not every insult needs to be addressed. And not every person has earned the right to be taken seriously. It's a kind of emotional freedom that comes not from giving up, but from growing up. But still, some days, it's hard. Some words sting more than others. Some situations catch us off guard. It's in those moments that I remind myself of one powerful truth. What people say about you often says more about them than it does about you. If someone's constantly trying to tear you down, it's usually because they're crumbling inside. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they're insecure. Maybe they're simply hurting and don't know how to express it in any other way. But their behavior is not your burden to carry. Your job isn't to fix their attitude, it's to guard your peace. And one of the most effective ways to do that, especially when emotions start rising, is to train yourself to think long-term. When someone disrespects you, it's natural to want to win the moment, to clap back, to land that perfect line that shuts them down. But ask yourself, what do I gain? A few seconds of satisfaction? A bruised relationship? Maybe a regret that lingers for years? The truth is, most arguments aren't worth the price. I learned this lesson from a man I used to work under, a manager who didn't just dislike me, he seemed to take joy in trying to humiliate me. There were days I'd walk into meetings knowing I'd be his target. But I didn't bite. I stayed focused, documented my work, and kept showing up with quiet consistency. 6 months later, he was let go for poor leadership. I wasn't just still standing, I was promoted. And I didn't have to shout to get there. I just had to outlast the storm. Sometimes the greatest revenge is living well and not giving anyone the satisfaction of watching you lose your composure. But what if the disrespect happens in public? What if someone calls you out in front of others? Maybe they raise their voice, mock your ideas, or try to embarrass you on social media. That's where one of the most unexpected tools comes into play, the internal laugh. Now I'm not talking about being smug or sarcastic. I'm talking about that quiet inner smirk you give yourself when you realize just how little power this person really has over you. When someone attacks your character and you don't flinch, it confuses them. When they try to provoke you and all they get is silence, or worse, a knowing smile, they don't know what to do. Why? Because their goal was control, and you didn't give it to them. I remember watching a man once in the middle of traffic being cursed at by another driver. Horns blaring, windows rolled down, words I won't repeat. And the man? He just sat there, calm as a pond. Didn't say a word, didn't even look over. After a few moments, the other driver gave up, huffed off, and sped away. That man didn't just keep his peace, he won. And that's what I want for you. Not to become emotionless, but to become untouchable. To reach a place where your peace isn't so easily stolen. Because let's be honest, some people live off drama. They're like emotional vampires, sucking energy from anyone who'll react. But if you don't react, they starve. They burn themselves out. And you walk away full of the dignity they thought they could take from you. This isn't just about staying calm in one moment. It's about building a life where calm becomes your default, not your exception. And one of the best ways to do that is to build a rock-solid sense of who you are. You see, when someone disrespects you, they're hoping you'll forget yourself. That you'll trade your character for a cheap win. That you'll react in a way that makes you look just like them. But you're better than that. You've lived too long, seen too much, and earned too much wisdom to throw it all away just to prove a point. I used to be the kind of person who had a quick tongue. If someone came for me, I'd come back twice as hard. And for a while, it felt like power. But it wasn't. It was pride, dressed as strength. And eventually, I realized something important. Every time I lashed out, I lost a little piece of the person I wanted to become. So I stopped reacting. I started remembering who I was, what I stood for, what I wanted to model for the people around me, especially the younger ones watching. And that shift changed everything. It helped me build what I now call a peace threshold, a sort of emotional filter that asks in every situation, is this worth my peace? If the answer's no, I move on. Not because I'm weak, but because I'm finally strong enough to walk away. And I'll tell you something else. It feels good. Not just in the moment, but in the days that follow. When you can lay your head on your pillow at night and know that you didn't let someone drag you into their chaos, there's a quiet pride in that. A deep, lasting satisfaction that no argument can give you. So if you find yourself facing someone who disrespects you, at work, at home, in your community, I want you to try something simple. Don't speak. Don't sigh. Don't even raise an eyebrow. Just breathe. Let them talk. Let them twist themselves into a knot. Let them expose exactly who they are while you stay exactly who you are. Because that's real power. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't need an audience. It doesn't come from raising your voice, winning arguments, or putting someone in their place. It comes from self-respect, so solid, so steady, that no insult can rattle it. And the older I get, the more I realize that's the kind of strength I want to live with every day. By now, maybe you've begun to notice something. All of this, staying calm, walking away, choosing peace over ego, it isn't about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. The moments when you stay calm aren't moments of weakness. They're milestones. Proof that you've grown beyond the need to prove anything at all. But how do you build that kind of strength, especially in a world that constantly pulls at your emotions? One way is through practice, starting with your inner voice. That little whisper in your head that speaks the loudest when you're alone. You've got to train it, not to always be positive, but to always be wise. The next time someone tries to get under your skin, pause and ask yourself quietly, is this who I want to be remembered as? Because every reaction builds your reputation, especially the ones you think no one notices. The world's watching, sure. But more importantly, you're watching yourself. And sometimes the best way to stay calm is to remember how far you've already come. Think about it. You've survived heartbreak, disappointment, loss, betrayal. You've held your tongue when it mattered, and maybe, just maybe, you've spoken up when you wish you hadn't. That's called experience. That's called wisdom. So the next time someone disrespects you, try doing something radical. Don't react. Just smile on the inside. Not because they were right, but because they're irrelevant to your peace. Let them spin their wheels. Let them waste their breath. Meanwhile, you conserve yours for what truly matters. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Not every battle deserves your presence. Not every table deserves your seat. And not every comment deserves your energy. The older we get, the more we must protect the energy we have left. Not out of scarcity, but out of purpose. You've earned that right. And let's not forget, silence isn't coldness. It's clarity. Sometimes the strongest message is no message at all. You're not ignoring what happened. You're just not inviting it into your spirit. You're saying, this doesn't belong in me. That's what this kind of strength gives us. Not a blank face or a hardened heart, but a calm spirit that doesn't get pulled off course by every wind that blows. Now, I know some folks might hear all this and say, so what, you're just supposed to let people walk all over you? No, absolutely not. This isn't about being passive. It's about being strategic. It's about knowing that real influence doesn't come from shouting, it comes from staying rooted in who you are. You want to know the most dangerous kind of person? It's not the one who yells the loudest or hits the hardest. It's the one who stays calm under pressure. The one who doesn't flinch when insulted. The one who never lets a moment of weakness define a lifetime of strength. Because that's a person you can't predict. And if they're wise enough, they may not even strike back at all. Not because they couldn't, but because they've outgrown the need to. That, my friend, is the kind of person I want you to become. Calm, centered, respected, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. You don't need to fight to prove your strength. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to walk through life with your head high, your heart steady, and your peace intact. And if someone dares to disrespect you, let them. Let them say what they want, believe what they want, think what they want. Because you'll be too busy living your truth to entertain their noise. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Not just for watching, but for caring enough about your own growth to explore what it means to truly master your emotions. That takes courage. That takes character. And it deserves respect. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you had a moment where you stayed calm and later felt proud of it? Or maybe a time when you reacted too fast? and learned from it? Share your experience in the comments. You never know who might be reading and feel a little less alone because of your story. And if this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of your strength or gave you something to think about, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps others find this content. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Strong Elderly Life, where we talk about topics that matter, things that help you grow, find peace, and live with purpose after 60. Because let's face it, life doesn't slow down after 60. But it can absolutely get better, deeper, and more meaningful. Here's to staying calm, to living with wisdom, and to walking through life with the kind of quiet strength that only someone like you could carry. Take care of yourself. And remember, you don't need to react to be powerful. You already are.